And again, welcome. If you haven't had a chance to share your name, a location, and an emoji that describes how you're feeling in this moment, I'm going to encourage you to do that in the chat. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to open up and give you a run of show so that you know what to expect during our time here together. And again, if you have any questions or curiosities, you can put it into the chat or you can put it into the Q&A, which is available to you all. So my name is Courtney Wright. I'm the Director of Leadership Development and Training at the Millennial Action Project. I am super excited to be here with you all for our inaugural Lunch and Learn featuring Representative Jeremy Gray. This is an opportunity for us to highlight the work of legislators in our network and then also learn some useful skills and tools that we can bring back to our own work. So we are super excited for the opportunity to connect with Representative Gray today on the topic of mindfulness. So before we jump into the conversation, I am going to share a little bit about Rep. Gray so we know who we are hearing from today. Representative Jeremy Gray is a native of Opelika, Alabama, and currently serves as the state representative for District 83 in the Alabama House of Representatives. His background includes being a collegiate and professional football player, founder of Elevate Your Grind, a lifestyle brand that focuses on empowerment through mental and physical wellness, and the founder of the Curtis House, a local nonprofit facility in his hometown, serving as a safe haven for the elderly, adults, and children. During the 2018 election, Representative Gray was elected to the Alabama House of Representatives with 63% of the vote and was soon after elected to serve as the minority whip in the Alabama House of Representatives. Recently, he was nominated by Alabama's Governor Kay Ivey to serve on the Alabama Statewide Health Coordinating Council and Innovate Alabama. The 2021 legislative session brought Representative Gray great success. During this time, he was able to pass legislation that was recognized both nationally and internationally. He sponsored legislation that lifted the 28-year ban on yoga in Alabama's K-12 public schools. This legislation led to an invitation to discuss its impact on MSNBC's All In with Chris Hayes. During the 2021 session, he also sponsored legislation for a state-level matching fund program for small business innovation research and small technology transfer research. Representative Gray continued to carry that momentum into 2022, passing a massive criminal justice reform bill that allows a 180-day grace period on fines and fees for inmates transitioning into society. A fun fact, Representative Gray has been working on his new book, Yoga and Me, A Child's Guide to Yoga. More information can be shared and found in your email, and the book will be available for pre-order soon. So I want to say welcome to Representative Gray, our featured speaker in today's Lunch and Learn. Representative Gray, before we jump into some of the tools that we can use for mindfulness, can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to politics?
Yeah, I think with any young person, whether it be generational Z or millennial, we're kind of called to actually serve because there's a void of a voice, right? And so for me, in my community, me coming back in 2015 after playing football in Canada, I wanted to actually be the part of the solution for my community. So I started the Curtis House, and the Curtis House is kind of unique in that I took my great grandfather's land and basically turned it into a community resource center. So we do things like free legal services. We have a greenhouse. We have a organic garden. We do yoga, have a fire pit, things of that nature though. So, but a lot of times when you're starting new ideas and you have, I wouldn't just say like it's an old guard, but you have people who have their way of doing things. And so this concept was like far-fetched for some people in the community. And it just really put me in a position where I wanted to actually be a part of the solution. And so that prompted me to run for elected position, because I'm saying if I'm coming back from playing football and I want to do something good in my community and I'm going through these barriers, why not, actually brain change and basically run for elected seat. So that way no one else would have these barriers. So for a lot of times, I think that I was just the person that could open the door for young people to run for elected positions in this area. This is Alabama. This is not New York and California and places where young people are invited to run at an early age. So I just kind of wanted to be the first person to actually open that door for young people in this area.
Thank you for sharing that. So you answered a calling, so to speak, and to be a voice for young people in elected positions. What are some of the challenges that you have faced as a legislator, more especially as a younger legislator?
Well, I would just say during the process of when you're running for an election, everyone thinks you're too young. I was 32 at the time, so you spend a lot of time trying to prove yourself. And so once you prove yourself, I hadn't had any obstacles when it comes to age, besides, my first day in the legislature and people thought I was an intern or, they thought I was staff because like you look very young, right? They thought I was like 20 something years old and a student. But once I got past that part of it, actually getting things passed wasn't really, so much of a barrier for me. Maybe the political landscape in Alabama, being that I'm a Democrat and we're in a super what you call minority. So it's just hard to get things passed in general. It doesn't really matter age. It's just that we don't have the numbers in Alabama. So I had to really use the tools that I learned in sports to figure out how to find commonality, how to bring camaraderie and cohesive um, partnership with my partners across the aisle. And in Alabama, sports is one of those things that is a commonality to a lot of people. So once people understood that I played sports and they were able to trust me as a person and build that relationship with me, I was able to pass things like criminal justice reform or the yoga bill that took 3 years to pass, or I was able to get a bill that really helped the economics of startups when you talk about small businesses. So it was really me establishing a trust factor with my colleagues.
I love that. I thank you for sharing that. One question, today is National Stress Awareness Day. And so, thinking about your role as a legislator and the 3 years that it took you to pass this bill around bringing yoga back into K through 12 schools, what would you say are some of your biggest stresses as a legislator?
I think that I think as people in general, we hate to say no, right? I spent a lot of time in my early years saying yes to everything, right? So, and I covered two districts and they're on two different time zones. So I was just kind of stretching myself out. And then the more popular I got, I was not only, expanded through two districts, a whole state. So learning to say no is a real stressor, right? Because you want to say no because you want to reserve your energy, but at the same time, you don't want to make people upset. So trying to find that balance of when to say no, when to say yes, I think that was my biggest stressor, right? Really trying to please people, and we're in the business of pleasing people, so it makes it tough sometimes.
Yeah, I can definitely see that being stressful. And, a lot of people asking you, and you're in this role as a public official, having to respond to people because that's what the expectation is. And so, figuring out what are the best things for you to put your time to, and how do you prioritize your time. I just want to pivot a little bit because we talked a little bit about the stress, but I'm curious to know, how did you get into mindfulness? Like, what brought you into that space?
So I would say the physical part of mindfulness or mindfulness movement or yoga was started through sports. And so I was very naive at first to what was yoga. For me, as an athlete, it was just something to help me with my flexibility, my balance, my strength. I really didn't think of it as anything but an exercise, right? Something that, my coach introduced to me that would help me long term in my career. All right. But once I started actually, because I became a yoga instructor for a local recreational center, I understood the components of yoga from a more of a, mind, body, and spirit concept. And so that was very helpful. And just really understanding that, your breath, when people think about yoga, a lot of times they think about these poses that a lot of us can't actually do, right? Or it takes years and years to actually perfect these poses. But it's really the art of breathing, right? And so once I was able to understand that yoga was breathing, I understood the power of breathing and breath, right? And so when us as people in high stressful situations, we're able to have a clear temperament, a just settle breathing, just mild tempered breathing. We're usually able to make great decisions. We usually are we act less, right? So we don't react, we're not impulsive, and we usually solve problems, right? We don't just jump to conclusions. So for me, it really helped me in my life because when you're in football, you go through depression, right? That transition from football, everybody thinks you're a hero and you're in the lights, to actually just kind of being a normal citizen. But it also helps in just the daily stresses of expectation and anger, and you have conflict resolution with people. So for me, yoga really helped me bring down my temperament, right? Because I think that, you play sports and you play this gladiator sports, uh, you usually want to be aggressive, right? It's usually more of a physical altercation. Someone says something to you, you want to actually exert your strength, your power over them, because that's kind of what you've been taught throughout the years. But I think yoga has really allowed me to actually play this mental game of understanding that you don't have to be physical, right? You can actually talk it out. You can come to a solution, and sometimes you won't agree with people. Sometimes you have to agree to disagree, and that's fine. But I think that the wholeness of mindfulness actually just really put me in a better space in life. And so for me, bringing that legislation was really more catered on how do we get young people to breathe, to practice mindfulness at an early age so they don't have trauma as an adult.
That's great. Thank you. Can you think to a specific moment where you had to rely on your mindfulness practice as a legislator?
Yeah, trying to pass the yoga bill, right? So the yoga bill was banned 28 years ago from the day I introduced the bill in 2019. So it's about yeah, maybe 93. So I think I was like 8 years old at that time. So for me, I thought I was just bringing a piece of legislation that everyone has experienced yoga in some capacity, meaning they've heard of it, is in gyms, people participate in church. So I didn't really think too much of bringing the bill. I just thought it was a past time, and now we're in like a new time, and that the bill would pass. But when I brought this piece of legislation, people came out, very conservative Christian people came out around the undertone of India, Hinduism, and all those things. So imagine having to really debate over nonsense, right? Because the first you think about it was banned in the first place. Then you think about you actually really debating people to have yoga in schools when yoga is everywhere throughout United States. And on top of that, you're making national news I mean, I want to be in the news, but I don't think I want to really be in the New York Times and all these different platforms to actually unban yoga in schools. And then, the tagline would say you couldn't say namaste, right? And so that was part of the negotiation in the bill, that we couldn't do Sanskrit, we couldn't have religious undertones. Me understanding as a yogi that doesn't necessarily matter, but we also have to understand that I'm in Alabama and that I also have to compromise with my colleagues to get it passed. So I think that was a very stressful situation in the beginning because I had to do so much explaining. So talk to really all my colleagues, and every time I thought I was there, it was a new person. It was a new obstacle. It was somebody else I had to talk to. I get it through the House, and I have to talk to the Senate. So you're talking about 3 years of really educating, really having to be patient, and really having to answer the questions of some of your premier news platforms about yoga in schools. And so for me, it was a venture. I'm glad that I got to experience it, but in the beginning, it was very stressful.
It sounds like your own mindfulness practice allowed for you to be prepared for that marathon, that 3-year marathon that you were on. And I'm curious to know, in all these conversations that you've had across the aisle with your peers on the other side, um, how did they receive once you did the conversation and explained a bit more and they made the compromise? Like, have you seen them approach mindfulness or yoga in these spaces differently now
Yeah,
that they've been better educated?
yeah, I think so. Me attaching to the physical part, I mean, it didn't really work like I thought it would work, right? You start bringing up people like LeBron James, Tom Brady, and how, athletes really embrace this practice. It was more when I attached it to mental health, because in Alabama, we just started funding mental health in schools, and a lot of organizations came out and say they was in support of this yoga bill because it actually helped with mental health. And we struggle in Alabama to preventative ways to prevent, suicide, help kids cope with daily stressors. So I really was strategic on how I brought it the next time, right? It failed the first time, I brought it the next time. And so once the education portion came and there was just more information and data around the issue, my colleagues actually came to me the last year and said they was going to help me get it through the finish line. So 2019, I was like, man, I'll probably be 40 years old, 50 years old before I pass this yoga bill. But within the next 2 years for education, my colleagues came to me and said, look, we just been taking a lot of slack from our wives, our children about this yoga thing. And we don't know about it, right? Because we don't actually practice it. And so just through those encounters, they actually came back and say, yeah, we want to help you pass this bill. And so, of course, I was able to pass it through the House. And then, the Senate is a whole different beast in itself. So I was actually able to get it through both House and Senate in 2021 to get it passed.
That's great. I love how you speak about how many different ways someone can approach mindfulness. So there's obviously the physical aspect, then there's the mental aspect, and then there's obviously an emotional aspect, being able to emotionally regulate so that you're not responding, I don't want to say irrationally, but impulsively in situations. What are some of your mindfulness techniques? Like, what is it that you do in your own practice?
So one thing that I do, I start the morning off with, I always kind of do I project, right? And so projection is really about getting up and really planning out your day. So in sports, I just don't show up on the field on Saturdays and Sundays and get interceptions and sacks and all those things. I practice every day leading up to the game. And so for me, projection is basically imagery, right? You're kind of really thinking about your day. It's like your to-do list. Do I need to check my attitude today? Do I need to practice on being a better friend? Whatever it may be. And I actually project those thoughts. And then in the middle of the day, when I feel like I actually need to hone in and be grounded, I basically connect with myself. So I may do breathing. I may do a meditational walk or whatever it may be, and just to be grounded, because every so many moving parts around you each and every day, so many people pulling you. You have to actually be able to connect to oneself, because the power of love, the power of basically overcoming any obstacle start with self first. So then I connect. And at the end of the day, I really reflect on what I could do better for the next day. And so I kind of use those three things to take me to day, because sometimes we can heighten a situation where we have a bad day, we have a flat tire, we have, things that don't go our way. But at the end of the day, when you reflect on it, it wasn't that bad, right? Like, you're still living, you're still breathing. you're still amongst people, right? And you still have like your fingers, your toes, your hair. So when you're thankful for the small things, when you reflect at the end of the day, it's like, oh, I survived. Wasn't that bad, right? I've had worse days. So for me, that's something that I take with me day to day. That projection, connection, and reflection.
I love that. Projection,
Connection and
connection,
reflection.
reflection. Oh, that's so easy to remember. I might have to use that and repeat it in my own life. When you're thinking or when you're saying, because oftentimes we know the lives of legislators are very busy. And so it could seem like a monumental task to incorporate projection, connection, and reflection. How much time do you spend on this? And how much time do you recommend people spend on it in order to get the benefits of it?
Just 5 minutes. It's just like, praying. Is just like you have to brush your teeth. So just you pretty much just add it as a part of your routine. Just 5 minutes. I mean, you're really not trying to do it for a long period of time through a hectic day, but you're really just trying to actually get those vibrations in a positive mindset, right? So sometimes we carry over stuff from last night, right? And we wake up and we're low energy, right? So how do we change the trajectory of that energy? Well, we have to have positive reinforcement. And how do we, through a day where we're barely eating and we're just, some people are campaigning, how do we just connect with ourselves? 5 or 10 minutes of just breathing, inhaling and exhaling, and just being present in the moment, right? Because sometimes we can be in yesterday, we can be in tomorrow, we can be everywhere, just connect. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like you're decompressing, you're just reflecting. So maybe 15 minutes a day for, 5, 5, and 5 will actually get you started.
That's great. Thank you. For those that are here, we're actually going to go through some exercises. But before we do that, we do want to acknowledge any questions that have come up in the chat for Representative Gray that so he can answer. And then we will move on to, actually putting some things into practice so that you can get comfortable with it and carry these tools into your day-to-day. So I'm going to begin with a question from Alex, and he asked, as a legislator, what's the best thing we in our own communities can do to support our legislators? So I'm going to hand that over to Representative Gray because I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I would just say get involved, right? As legislators, we kind of know what our task and what our job is, right? But we can't be everywhere, right? The biggest thing is how do you help your legislator in their communities, right? How do you help them and be, a point person for them in the community? And that's kind of the things that I look at. If there's issues that I may not know about or may not be abreast of, let me know. If there are events that you want me to be a part of, let me know. But also ask how you can help the legislator, right? Do they have an event coming up? Do they, is it something that they're missing the ball on? Because a lot of times we try to kind of be well-rounded, but we're very linear sometimes, right? Because especially me, right? If I start a task, I'm trying to finish that task, right? And so if I have several tasks that I'm trying to finish, I really have tunnel vision, right? I'm not really kind of thinking about what other issues or what's going on in the community or in the world. I'm in my own world a lot of times. So just really playing and just kind of being an advocate for us in our community. And if we're doing our job and that we're doing the best we can, also protect us, right? Speak up for us. A lot of times you could do 100 things right and one thing wrong, and you just kind of have those naysayers. So just having advocates on the ground, people speaking light into you is really a way to help, for me, to help legislators.
Thank you. I have another question, and this is from Sina, and he's curious to know, when you become a legislator, are you just a legislator, or are there other jobs that you have? Do you keep your job and what that looks like? And then how do you balance that out? So when you think about if you're having to juggle multiple roles, where does mindfulness come into that?
So I learned a new term. So it's hard. I think it's hard to balance life. You just have to find harmony, right? Because when you're elected, they tell you that this is a part-time job. This is not a part-time job, right? Because you're literally you're trying to be a better at your job. You're trying to go to these leadership things and these conferences, and you're trying to be engaged in the community, and you're also trying to actually have a life as well. And so you have to have some other form of revenue coming in, but this pretty much really takes a lot of your time up. And it's one of those things is you don't get paid based on your performance, right? Because if you got paid based on your performance, a lot of people would get paid a lot, right? But you get paid the same that everyone in the state does. And it doesn't matter if you do a lot of work or a little bit of work, or are you good at your job, or you bad at your job, right? And so you have to have other streams of income. So you have to basically find harmony in it, right? You won't be balanced in it, because you don't know when something in your district is going to occur. I mean, when I was first elected, a tornado hit my district and basically killed 23 people. There's no way I could like prepare for that, right? And so that's just something that comes up, and that's part of the job, and that's part of life. So just finding that work play balance, and that I call it harmony, is really what you have to do. So most legislators in Alabama, they're older, so they're either a businessman, they come from money, or they're retired. So where the problem really lies is that when young people get into politics, right? Because you're really just starting your life. So you're not only trying to balance politics, but maybe education, maybe work, maybe family, and maybe even play life. So it is really one of those things that you just have to find harmony, not necessarily balance.
Do you mind expanding on harmony? What is, I
So,
mean,
so harmony just means that finding a way to make everything work for you, right? With balance, is like trying to give everything a little bit of your time. Well, it didn't really work like that, right? So just say that you're supposed to really be doing something with work, but then politics is really taking your time. There's no balance in that, right? The scale is really going to be tilted, right? So if someone is going through, just say, an election, and they have an opponent right now, right? Well, if they have a job, they have to basically choose between that job or winning, right? And so there's really no balance there. But how do you become harmonized within what you're doing, right? How do you make it work for you? It won't always be 50-50. It won't always be a third, a third, a third. But how do you bring harmony in what you're doing, where you have a sound mind, sound body, but you understand that there's going to be sacrifice one way or the other? I mean, I think that we all sometimes think we can have it all, but at the end of the day, you're sacrificing something: time, family, whatever it may be. You may be giving all of it a little bit, but sometimes when you give everything just a little bit, you just only good at it, right? And when you give your all to something, you're great at it. And so you have to actually figure out what is the great balance or harmony and bringing that together. And so that's kind of how I kind of look at harmony. And someone brought that to my attention, because you really can't actually balance all those things.
I love that, making your life work for you rather than trying to make everything in your life work. I want to see if there's any other questions. Feel free to put it into the chat before we go through. We're actually going to take Representative Gray's projection, connection, and reflection, and we're going to put that into practice for ourselves. So if there are questions, we'll give you about a minute or so to put that into the chat to answer them, and then we are going to go through Representative Gray's practice so that you all can put it into practice. And then hopefully whatever resonates, you're able to carry it with you past this webinar. So if we don't have any questions, and again, feel free to keep putting them into the chat and we'll open it back up for Q&A. We're going to start with the projection. So if you remember what he said about projection, it really is about setting an intention for your day, planning out the day, seeing what it is that you hope to accomplish. So in this moment, we're in the middle of our day. So we have a little bit of time left in the day. So about half the day left, depending on what time you go to sleep. I would like to encourage you to take this moment to project and think about 3 things that you hope to accomplish in the remaining portion of your day. And whatever those 3 things are, go ahead and just write them down so that you can kind of create that to-do list for you that helps you to bring some harmony into your day instead of that, because to-do lists are never ending. So you can always add things to the to-do list. So we're just going to project and do 3 things that we can add or accomplish in this day that we have. And we're going to take about take about a minute or two to jot those things down and think about what it is, what 3 things you hope to accomplish in this day, today, not this week, but today. And I'm going to put that prompt into the chat. So if you missed it, you're able to see. But what 3 things do you hope to accomplish with the rest of today? Hopefully you've been able to write down your 3 things. If not, feel free to continue writing. And we're going to move into that connection portion. So how can you connect with yourself? And there's a couple things that Representative Gray mentioned. So he said meditative walks, connecting with your breath, just moving and allowing yourself to be present with yourself. And again, it could be very challenging to do this when you feel like you have a million things going on. It doesn't take a lot of time. And so being able to connect with your breath, I always feel is the most efficient and easiest way to connect with yourself. And we are going to do a breathing exercise. It's one of my favorite. And it's called the box breath. Representative Gray, are you familiar with that?
Well, I don't know. You got to let me know first because they all have
Okay.
different terminology. So some people call it Darth
They do.
Vader.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So the box breath is essentially you inhale to a certain count, you hold for a certain count, you exhale to a certain count, and then you hold.
Yeah.
So awesome. So we're going to do the box breath. And this is really, we're going to start with 3, but some people do 10 seconds and longer. I don't know people's lung capacity, so I don't want to hold their breaths too long. But to my count, I'm going to give you the direction, and you're just going to follow the direction with your breath. But first, you want to make sure that your lungs are in a position where they're nice and expanded. So go ahead and elongate your spine. So just lift that heart, relax your shoulders. And we are going to inhale to the count of 3. So inhale, 1, 2, 3. Hold for 3, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 3, 1, 2, 3. And then hold for 3, 3, 2, 1. And then you just return to your normal breath. The beauty of the box breath is that it could be done anywhere. Nobody knows that you're doing it. And as you probably just experienced, it really did allow your mind and your body to slow down in the moment and give yourself the opportunity to be fully present. Representative Gray also mentioned Darth Vader. We call it Darth Vader breath or lion's breath. We also have a breath called the Ujjayi, which is the ocean sounding breath. And that essentially, we're going to do that one as well, because that is a very easy one to help bring yourself back into a state of calm. So again, I'm going to have you come into that proper seated position where your spine is elongated so that your lungs are nice and open. And you're going to take a deep breath in through your nose, allowing your lungs and heart and body to expand as much as it's able. And then you're going to open your mouth and exhale. So creating a nice ocean sounding breath. We're going to do that twice more just so that we can really feel it. So you're going to inhale through your nose, again, bringing in all the air as much as you're able, allowing your body to just expand. And you're going to open your mouth and exhale. And then once more, inhale through your nose, allowing your body to expand. And then open your mouth and exhale. Again, as you probably saw with the box breath, that is also a great technique that allows for you to just bring down, if you're at like a 10 or even a 5+, it brings you back down to a state of center so that you're able to move forward more clearly and calmer. And Alex, yes, it is great. See, and it's something simple that really, it didn't even take us a minute to do that. So that's the beauty of the breath, that when you bring it into a state of control and that you're bringing your awareness to it, it really does start to calm the body. And then our last is going to be that reflection. And I think a prompt for this reflection is something that you are grateful for. And I'm actually going to ask that you put it into the chat. So we're in this month of gratitude. Take a moment, think about something that you are grateful for, and then share it with us in the chat so that we could see what you are grateful for. And that is our reflection. What is something you are grateful for? Yes, life. Awesome. Grateful for the people in this room, a new job. Family is doing well. Family, faith, and life, health, children, peace of mind, this nation. So as you could see, it took you all no time to determine and identify the things that you are grateful for. And so I encourage you all that as you're thinking about your projection, connection, and reflection, if you're struggling trying to figure out what to reflect on, coming back to a state of gratitude is always a great thing to reflect on because it reminds you of what you have rather than what you do not have. And so, as you could see, that took us no time. So we were able to get through that practice of mindfulness. Hopefully you all are feeling better or less stressed or more relaxed than when we started this webinar. If there are questions, feel free to put it in the chat. We are going to hang around for you. Otherwise, be on the lookout. We will send you this recording and a brief survey to get your feedback. Know that this will be the first of many lunch and learns to come. We are so grateful for your presence here today and supporting our first lunch and learn. I thank you on behalf of MAP for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future. And thank you, Representative Gray, for your expertise and your time and just being you. We appreciate you immensely.
Thank you for having me.